Justin with Lucky8 Off-Road, and today we're going to take a deep dive, like Olympic dive, into understanding how to put 35-inch tires on a new Defender L663. We're going to look at things like offset on the wheels. We're going to look at what wheel spacers do and how sometimes they're not really your friend. And then we're going to get into all the things that need to be moved in order to fit 35s. Okay, that's a lot. It's going to be a good one. Cue the intro. Okay, we're going to start off with a stock wheel and tire combination. This is running a 20-inch wheel. And we get this question all the time. Well, will it fit a 20-inch wheel? Actually, the wheel doesn't really matter. If you have an 18-inch wheel, you're concerned about hitting the brake rotor because the rim is now 2 inches smaller. If you had a 22-inch wheel, it wouldn't be a concern for the rotor, but you're starting to lose sidewall. So the wheel itself, diameter, doesn't matter. It's the tire size that does. This is about a 32.5-inch tire. And when we go to articulate it like so, you can kind of see how close it is. A little bit more room back here, a little bit tighter in the front. But we increase this tire size, it's going to make it closer to the bumper here. I'll bring the camera in. We're going to take a quick look at this being a stock tire and how close it is to the bumper. All right, as we move the tire closer, when it turns into the bumper, getting about 1.5 finger space, you are less than 1 inch of clearance right now on the stock tire. You increase this to a 33-inch diameter, it fits 33.5, and then you run the risk of this rubbing as the suspension goes up and down. It changes where the radius of the tire is compared to the bumper, and that's where you get a lot of your rubbing issues. Right here, really not an issue, right? So it's only when you turn, and it's not so much at full lock. It's like right in here where they tend to rub. Now let's put some wheel spacers on and see what difference that makes. All right, with the wheel spacer on, it looks so much better. Pushes the tire out, gets it away from being completely hidden by the fender itself, and gives the vehicle a much more aggressive look. The downside is now the wheel is sticking out, in this case 30 mil, and when you go to turn it, it's changing this arc. I'll bring the camera in and we see how much space we lost by adding the wheel spacer. All right, there you go. Not even enough room for a finger. We are running. This is the most scientific tape measure on the planet, by the way. You're less than a 1/2 inch of clearance. All right, I hope that is starting to make sense. Push the tire out farther. It is changing the arc that the tire swings on, and we're almost hitting the bumper on a stock size tire. 30-inch wheel spacer. You upsize this tire to a 33.5, it's definitely going to hit. We always tell people 33-inch diameter is kind of the magic spot, unless you want to trim. And that's going to bring us to the next section of the video. So if you're looking to do some trimming, I'm going to walk you through it. Here we are with a 35-inch 1250. So it's a very wide tire on a Land Rover, being 12.5 inches wide. The wheel has an offset in it similar to the wheel spacer, so we're bringing everything out. The reason we do that is the wide tire like this will rub the control arm, so you have to move it out. And what we learned is the farther out, the more trouble we're going to have with the radius. But this is what it looks like stock, you know, no trim, and a 35-inch tire. There we go, a little bit of rub. So as soon as we move it in, it's going to rub here. and it's going to rub the felt in the back. I'll get you guys another angle so you can see what I mean. Okay, now comes the fun part. We need to trim the bumper. Of course, it's a Land Rover, so it's gonna be a little bit more complicated than that. We have intercoolers there. We're gonna need to move the intercoolers forward. Then we can trim the bumper enough so that the tires are clear. In the back here, we gotta deal with the felt and a little metal bracket that covers the air conditioning lines. We gotta remove all of that. It's gonna be a deep dive, I told you. So I'm gonna get this tire off. I'm gonna get the front bumper off, and then we're gonna go from there. All right, we got the front bumper cover off. Next thing we need to do is address this intercooler. If you wanna see how to get the front bumper cover off, I've done that in several videos. The hidden winch mount is the one where I go deep into showing it, but it's already been done so many times, I don't wanna add it to this video. So now that we're to this point, we're gonna get the intercooler housing out of the way. As the tire is swinging in, it's just gonna crush this cooler. What we do is we take it apart and lean it forward and grind or cut the plastic housing out of the way, making room for the 35s. I'll show you how to get this apart. First thing I like to do is pull out these 10 mils. One, up here, 2, and 3. There's a secret one on the back side. 1, and 3. Next up, I want to get rid of this lower duct. It's just little, get your popper tool. Wow, there you go. That one did not want to go. We're gonna pop these free. Careful down here, it's a coolant line, so don't go crazy. Get that out of the way, a little brake duct. Now, we've got one 10 mil to pop off. With everything free, we're going to gently separate the front plastic that we just unbolted and wiggle this back. You need, and I'm going to say it again, you need to be very careful pulling this front piece off. You don't want to dig into the aluminum of the cooler. That'll cause a big mess, and you're gonna have to replace the cooler. It's a little bit tight over here, so just take your time, wiggle it out of the way, and then now this is disconnected. Whoa, you stay still, flashlight. We can get rid of this. Now that the intercooler is free, that little secret bolt back here that goes to the housing, I want to hook that back up. Oh boy. Struggles. The struggle is real. All right. That's going to take the weight so it's not just dangling on the hoses. The next goal is to take this and slide it around to the front. We're going to put a little spacer in here, but since this has a factory winch, there's no room for it. We actually have to notch. We're going to grind this plastic to allow it to have enough room to swing out into the front. And as you can kind of see it, we are now moving forward, forward, forward to move the cooler like so, giving us plenty of room for those tires. We want to cut. I'm actually going to grind. But you want to remove that section like so. Move all the way to the edge. That way you can fit right here on that bolt location. There we go, all ground down. And if you look right there, you can see where we're bolting it to, like so. Depending on how much you need to move the cooler forward, you may need to put a spacer in. I know we need about a 1/2-inch spacer for 35-inch tires. We've got aluminum ones made up, but just a simple nut would work. You can stick it behind there, give you the spacing you need, or go get a proper spacer. With the cooler kicked forward, we're gonna go ahead and bolt it in place up top, and then the secret one in the back there. Now the real work begins. We need to remove a tremendous amount of plastic here on the radiator or the intercooler support. You can take it apart, you can pull it all out, drop the coolant, plug up the ends. There's 1,000 different ways that you can go about cutting this plastic. I'm gonna leave it up to you. I've got a really good system where I just grind it real fast. But if you do try to do it on the truck, there is a ton of electronics back here. Do not go in there with a Sawzall. So I'm gonna leave it up to you. Like I said, the way I do it is I just get our little grinder in there and whiz it off with a whizzy wheel. But I'll bring the camera and I'll show you exactly where I cut to make all the room you need. All right, right here we're gonna trim, get rid of this. We're gonna cut at an angle like that, get rid of this lower piece. There's some plastic right here we need to remove, and then this upper section, I don't want to cut the bracket, but we want to go all the way across and then come down to remove that. I'll bring the camera in and let you see all the lines, give you a much better idea. There you go. After everything's been shaved out of the way, this is what it's going to look like. I left the original white lines on there so you could kind of see where I was. We're right about perfect on everything. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the 35 on it. We're going to have the suspension deflated, and we're going to turn it and move it around and make sure there's enough clearance. I'm going on experience. Happen to be the first guy in the world to do this. First guy in the world with 35s on the Defender. Yeah, I know, shut up. Just keep teaching. Okay, so we're gonna get the tire on, we're gonna spin it, make sure it is not interfering with the intercooler, and then we're gonna put in the plastic liner, make sure there's enough room for that, and we're getting close. I feel good. My God, these cars look so good with 35-inch tires. All right, so we've got it on the car, completely compressed. This vehicle is running an SYA kit. If you don't know what that is, brief description is, it is a suspension spacer that goes on top of the air spring to lower the bump stop. So this is all the way down. Without that, the tire would be jammed up against this fender and you wouldn't be able to move the car at all. All right, everything's in play, it's on. Now we're gonna pivot it and see if it clears the cooler. All right, it's a little, it'll work, it'll clear, it's a little tight. So what I'm gonna do is add another spacer and we're gonna kick that cooler out just a little bit further. Give me another 1/2 inch worth of clearance. That way when the plastic fender liner is in there, we should have no problem. I'll get that on. I'm gonna bop the liner in and we'll take a look. Okay, way more room now. The other thing is I like to take a zip tie right around the cooler housing and utilize that hole that was in here for the little plastic fascia piece. We're not putting that back on, there's no room for it. And you zip tie it and it kind of pulls forward, giving you tons of room. I'm gonna just set the liner in there, see how it looks, and we should be getting really close. Okay, plastic fender liner's in there. It's gonna require a ton of massaging, but perfect, we don't hit. All right, now that we have the front all taken care of, it's time to work on the back side. First thing I like to do is get the liner out. It's held in with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little pop clips and an 8mm bolt. They look like that. I'm not going to waste your time. You know how to pop them out. Everybody's got a popper tool at this point. All right, this little metal plate that's covering up the AC lines needs to be moved. It's held on 1, 2, 3, 4 number 10s, and then there's a number 10 in here that we got to get rid of. That'll allow us to get that metal plate out of the way. Otherwise, the tire's going to hit it and it won't turn. Okay, with the metal plate out of the way, there is some little bracketry here that we need to massage. I'll bring it in so you can see it, but essentially this piece needs to get trimmed. This piece right here is a real pain in the bottom, so we got to trim that quite a bit. And then up here at an angle, get rid of all of that. And then I know from past experience, we got to kind of trim this too. I'll get you a real good angle and I'll use my paint pen to show you what I like to cut. First thing that's in the way is this little piece right here. So we're going to give that a chop out of the way. Run it down here like so. Remove it. Next is this. You just come in at an angle, catch the existing hole, get rid of it that way. And let me get you another angle of the other ones. Right here, like that, down. And this brings it to the nemesis. This, depending on how big your tires are, will determine how much of this needs to be massaged. Generally, it's right about where that little rivet, weld rivet head is. I kind of do like so. Plastic trim piece clips into this metal bracket. You like to just nip that out of the way. Over here, nip this out of the way. Going up top, come over, down. You got to get down the side a little bit. There's a little weld rivet, and just massage all of that out of the way. I know it looks like a lot, but it's really comes out pretty quick. It's aluminum. I just use a Sawzall. I have been called a Picasso with a Sawzall. So I'm going to get that done. Then we're going to put the tire on, test fit it, make sure it doesn't rub. Let's see how things turn out. Give me a minute. Okay, everything's trimmed up. Let's get the tire back on, articulate it, make sure it doesn't rub, and we can keep going forward. Okay, we got to see if we got clearance over here. All right, we know we got to trim that later on. Bring the camera in it and see how I do. Okay, we have room. Like I told you, that spot right there is the tricky one. It looks closer in this shot than it really is, so we got plenty of room. Okay, next up, we're going to put the fender liner back in, but before I do that, I like to hit it with a little bit of spray paint, just cover up the exposed aluminum. I'm going to go ahead, put that in, but we are not, well, you know what? I got ahead of myself. I'm going to get the liner in. You're going to find out that there's some brackets here missing for a couple of the pop pins. We're going to utilize this whole, the fabric back as far as we can. So that'll give you as much room on the fabric. With these big chunky tires at full bump, you're gonna probably rub the fabric. It's just the way it is. But as you're driving around, it won't have any contact, so I'm not real concerned about that. Okay, I'm gonna paint, I'm gonna put it in, and then I'll show you how to put the bolt through here to keep the felt back. Now that the liner's back in, you're gonna notice we remove some of those brackets that it would clip to. We want to be able to pull this back as far as we can to help avoid the tire rubbing on it. And if you remember that little hole right here we talked about, we're going to find that hole, take the drill through it, And then I'm gonna put an Allen head and a washer, and I'm gonna pin this felt back to it. If you don't, it will get wet and move and rub against the tire, make you insane. Ask me how I know. So I'm gonna pin it right there. After it's done, I'll show you what it looks like, and then we're gonna use a tie wrap down here and pull all of this back nice and tight. Another issue you're gonna see is this felt is gonna rub against the rock sliders. I assume everybody's got rock sliders if you're putting 35s on. If you don't, there won't be there and you won't have any issue. You'll just have to find a place to zip tie. We're gonna get to that next. What I like to do is just take a pair of scissors. Sure. With the felt trimmed, it should be able to just pop back nice and easy. Now we're gonna get a big zip tie, and I wrap it around the rock slider outrigger. Or actually, it's more of a stanchion. I'll show you what I mean. We are in the home stretch. Next thing to do, put the bumper cover on. I like to just attach it right here and then gently clip in the plastic. You don't want to be putting it in and out. It's just too much wear and tear on the bumper, so I just kind of get it there. Same thing on the other side. And then we're gonna have to work out how much we're trimming of the actual bumper cover now that we've made room with our coolers. With the bumper cover in place, like I said, gently put it in here. I use the Torx right here. What we're trying to do is hold the corner still, because the next thing we do is we need to trim the bumper. I've made little plates to fit inside. You know, it's basically a piece of angle iron if you want to make it at home, or if you want them, you can get them from us. It comes with a bunch of hardware and everything, make the job easier. So we're going to put that in. I'm going to show you where it goes so you get an idea what needs to be cut. Then we're gonna cut the bumper and pull the bumper cover off, mount the metal plates. That's the way I do it. And then put everything back together, put the liner in, put the tire on. You get the picture. Okay, so I'm gonna bring the metal plate in. I'll show you what it looks like and show you where I cut. Got a little ahead of myself. First thing we wanna do is get this little rubber trim piece off. Tiny Torx. It's a T20, we don't need that anymore. And then if you don't have our kit, you can use these. So we want to save these 1, 2, 3, yeah, get this fourth one, these little plastic clips right here. That's what they look like. So we're going to get those out and then we'll put the metal bracket in. Over here is the coolant line. Snapped in with like a quick clip. You're going to want to push that out of the way. Then we're going to set in our pin back kit. I like to line it up right to here, pushing it back like so. Also, I use the end of our kit on that line right here. And same thing up front, giving us the mark of where we want to cut. I'll put the, you know what, I'll get the marker in for you guys, pull this out of the way, and then you can see what it looks like. That's how much we're taking off. For a 35 1250, that's about what I need to take off. Again, as we talked about earlier, all tire sizes lie. Also, I cut right here. We leave this section in place where the little Torx is that holds it. There's no reason to cut all the way over. So I'm gonna go in like that, come across and end here. With this cut where we need it to be, we're gonna work on the outer section here. You can see I left a lot more meat here so we can blend it in real smooth. I'm using the blue painter's tape. My starting point is right about here at the top of the park distance sensor. And I kind of blend it down into the section that we've already cut off. You cut it away. I use a sander and we sand it all down as smooth as we can get. It's a cut piece of plastic. There's no way around it. And if you don't want your tires to hit, there's no way around it. So I start there. And again, depending if you have a little bit smaller tire, you can bring it down here. We've got crazy 37s like Steve Burt on Kong. I don't know what he did. He probably started up here, but you get the idea. Just move the plastic out of the way. Okay, with the bumper trimmed, we are now going to take it off and install the little metal bracket that I showed you earlier. I find it much easier to do on the bumper stand. If you don't have one, you can do it in the car, but I like to drill holes and put a little clip on the inside. If you're just gonna use screws into the plastic, then there's really no reason for you to take it off. I'm gonna take it off, put the bracket on, put the bumper back on, and we'll keep going forward from there. All right, I've got my little metal reinforcement bracket in place. Now we need to put the plastic liner in, but before we can do that, we've got to deal with this AC line. Be careful. I can only imagine how expensive the new Freon is. So what I normally do is gently move this rubber piece to where we need it and just kind of like so, and then zip tie it in place. Once the plastic shroud is back on the liner, it'll be tucked behind it and safe and sound. I'll zip tie it up and I'll show you guys what it looks like. All right, that's how I do it. I just put a little loop in it, do not kink it. And then I use that rubber piece, let's see, right there, up against the frame horn, big zip tie, loop it around, and it is neatly tucked out of harm's way. Okay, next up, we're gonna put the liner in. I'm only going to use these top two holes. With it in, we're gonna get some self-tapping screws and screw to the metal backing plate. All right, time to pick it back up in the air. Well, I'm gonna put the tire on it, pick it back up in the air, put it on the cart, and then we're gonna test fit the tire, make sure that there is no rub. We are like this close. Okay, again, all the way down to the bump stops, but we have the SYA kit, give us a little bit more room. It's not even sitting on the lift here. Let's give it a twist. Perfect. This is generally right where all the trouble happens. All the way in. No issues. As you bring it back out, wow, it doesn't want to turn. Heavy tire. Yep, we are good. So it is good news. Take the tire back off. I'm going to pull the bumper cover off completely. I'm going to put in the air ducts up front because I think it gives it a better look. We'll trim those on the inside and basically bolt it all back together. This thing's ready to go. Little tips and tricks. There's a piece of plastic that's generally here out of habit. I already got it out of the way. And I like to round this corner on both sides. So when we put the liner in, it doesn't get caught up. And depending on how aggressive you need to be with the liner, sometimes I notch the liner so it tucks back in. But I think we're gonna be all right if I just round this off with my little grinder friend. Okay, with the bumper cover back in place, just a reminder, we loosened up the 10 mils here, so we want to tighten those down. the electronics here, your wiring harness for your camera and your park distance sensors. We want to make sure that that is nowhere near down here. It was originally clipped at the bottom. I move it around the other side of the cooler and actually clip the harness into the cooler's little harness bracket thingamabob. So good with my words. But yeah, I clip it right there, move all the wires out of the way, zip tie it. We've got our brake duct in. I'm gonna wiggle the plastic shroud in place, tighten it down, chop the excess off of the brake duct, and by golly, I think we got it. Okay, final look. Got the air duct in, chop that out of the way, the part that was sticking through. I also re-drill a hole in the shroud piece here, the fender liner, so it sits better, allows it to move forward, because that's what we're trying to do. You can notch this section right here, helps keep it from bowing out. There's plastic inside the bumper. I grind all that down so it's not getting pried out. We want to keep it in. And next up, we're gonna put the tire on. All right, there you go. That was a deep dive into how I go about 35-inch tires on a Defender. I hope you learned something. I hope you transform your vehicle the way that we do. But if you don't want to take that on, I'm happy to keep doing them. I love doing these jobs. All right, guys, I'm going to get this out for some beauty shots. We'll have some better looks at it. And on that, I'll see you on the next one.